Hell, Zamint. Peace, gods and goddess. To just jump right into it, uh, black people, okay, the black race, we have to close our heart to war. You understand? Um, Too many moral and ethical practices have prevented us from being able to do what's necessary to advance our race. Okay, and by allowing so many feelings and emotions to play into to have a factor in our rebelliousness and in our rebellion and in our plight for liberation is very much so hindering us. Okay, um in modern times today, in the current times, we are seeing um, the various recipes that we need essentially to adapt in order to advance our race and in the position that we are here in America and our position in the world in general. Okay, um, and these three, I guess, examples um, are something that uh, we need to put together and formulate into a workable, feasible plan. Because evaluating these three different instances um, shows that Black people here in America that we are in a unique position in which that from these three situations we can tremendously learn a lot from and adapt these tactics into our plight for liberation. But first and foremost, we have to close our heart to war. Okay, so this brings me to the first point, and this is Israel. Okay, and the Jewish plight to make Israel a nation. Okay, um, historically, the Jews have always, have always relied on their self determination and their ability uh, to create business and to create self sustaining institutions in areas where others dare not step. Okay? And this is where turning off your heart comes into play. Uh, it is known by Zionists that their biggest political threat, okay, is that of the Anglo-Saxons, okay, that of the Wasp, and that has always historically been the battle between the two. You understand? Um, and with with the beginning of Israel and the plight for such, in the tactics in which they use, they are not always the most morally ethical. You understand? They are not always uh, by the Bible. Okay, and in fact, the Jews have time and time again altered the Bible in a way that justified their plight, that justified their actions. You understand? And a lot of us may see this as so morally unethical. Okay, we may see this as such a striking action to the soul and to your connection with the Creator, etc., etc. But when you are in the process of building a nation, when you are in the process of trying to establish yourself in the world as a power, ethics and morals does not matter. It goes out of the window. Okay, so, from the plight of Israel and the Jews, we can learn, you understand, that building these institutions and controlling the narrative of our own people, no matter how we must do so, is important. Okay, it is the most important thing. You understand? When you look at the relationship between Black people here in America and the Jews here in America, you will understand it was not, they did not exploit us. You understand? Just to exploit us, but in fact, because this is the only tactic in which they had. You understand? This is what they had. This is what they had to do in order uh, to begin to solidify their position here in America. Okay, and as someone who has closed their heart to war, it is not. It is not that I take this to offense. You understand? It is not that I take this to the heart. Okay. Um, when we talk about the plight of the Jews in Israel, you understand, and we talk about the relation with the black people here in America. Um, while while most Zionists are against integration, there are some that are for integration, and when they begin to influence our movement here in America. they essentially instilled both into us. You understand? They played both sides as they always have, because at the bottom line, their allegiance and their mindset is building this Israel nation. Okay, this is the mindset that we must have. We must do what we have to do in order to establish a nation, okay? In order to establish a state. This is what we must do. And these are one of the groups of people that we can essentially adapt certain recipes from. You understand? Now, again, you have to close your heart. You have to close your heart to war. And this brings me to the second point. Once we begin to build a nation, okay, once we begin to leverage our own self determination, this brings me to the war with Iran, as well as the Russian and Ukrainian war. Okay, because what Iran and Ukrainian has in the Ukrainian war has presented to us is that it is very feasible to create technology to defend our nation in which that we build. It is very possible. We are talking about drones that are being made for between $20,000 to $50,000, and some may be more expensive, but we are talking $20,000 to $50,000. Do you understand how feasible that is? We are talking about cheap drones being used to hold off bigger nations, to cause panic within bigger nations as they begin to war. Do you understand? From this we can learn that, especially if we adapt the first piece that we can learn from Israel, and that is putting our own nation first. We put our nation first so much that we uh, begin to step outside of our morals, and in order to establish this state. The second part is understanding that it is cheap to defend it. Do you understand that? It does not take millions and billions of dollars to establish some sort of militaristic defense. Okay? And then this brings me to the third point of North Korea. Do you understand? The only reason they are surviving is truly because of their geological position. Literally, that is it. Do you understand that? Do you understand how much trouble China would have if North Korea was not in the position that it was in? Yes, this comes with a lot of sanctions and economic strain on the nation of Korea, but that is not the piece that we are taking away from North Korea. Do you understand? What we are taking away is their use of their geological positioning to their advantage. As black people here in America, do you understand the tremendous geological advantage that we have here? Especially if we begin to cause disruption. We are inside the house of the nation that is wreaking havoc around the world. Do you understand the amount of political support that we will receive for this from other nations that are dealing with this? Because we are inside. Okay? Because we are inside. So from North Korea, uh you can take away, yes, they have a strong military and they face crazy economic strains on the nation, but because of their geological position, because of the place in which they are placed on the earth, they are able to still maintain a level of sovereignty. Do you understand that? And so, in conclusion, to take away from this video, close your heart to war. Do you understand? Close your heart to war and be like the Israelis, who even within themselves deal with the internal conflict of those who do not believe in Zionism and those who do not wish to see Israel become a true state. Do you see how they deal with it? How they suppress the internal dissent? This is what we must do, even within our own population. Not only do we take away from Israel their ability to focus on self determination and keep this one nation in mind, but also their ability to suppress the internal dissent. Because within the black population, we have a lot of internal dissent that we must suppress. Do you understand? And from there, when it comes to protecting that said nation, you look at the Iranian war as well as the war in Ukraine, and you see that it is cheap to build militaristic defenses. If we solidify the first step that we can learn from the Israelis about building our own self-determined economy based off the position in which we are put in, then we can use that same funding to then begin to develop these cheap but effective ways of militaristic defense as we build this nation. And then this brings us to the last point of North Korea and understanding that uh, our geological position, our very position on this earth, has put us in a position of leverage. Do you understand? We are in the house of a nation that is causing havoc around the world. If we begin to wreak havoc within this own nation, do you understand? We will gain more political support from those on the outside, and we will begin to have a certain grasp of leverage that we can use. Do you understand? Just by simply tapping in to our geological position that we are in. You understand? You have to close your heart to war.